Hello everyone and a very warm welcome to this class. So today's class and the coming two classes would be all about your chapter 9 advanced tax, TDS and TCS. I'm Sri Ridhima Bhatia, your faculty for these three classes. So I hope everyone has settled down. So before we proceed to our today's topic, which is advanced tax, TDS, TCS, does anyone has an idea or want to make a guess about what TDS actually is? No problem. Don't think it's a right or a wrong thing. Just make a guess if you have heard this word anywhere around or might have come into a usage of it. Come on, everyone, settle in and tell me what you understand by tax deduction at source, which is TDS or advanced tax. But first, let's focus on TDS. Okay, so I have got some interesting answer. TDS is tax deducted source paid by employer on behalf of employee. Good attempt, Akash. TDS is tax deducted source and TCS is tax deducted source. Okay, that's very honest. Okay. When department has doubt, they want to deduct tax in previous year, that is TDS. Okay, some kind of tax required to be collected and paid by the person from the source. Okay, it is levied on income. Very interesting answer. What else? Is it the income tax only? Is it a direct tax only? This we know. It is levied on the income. Okay. So tax deducted at source. Many of you have given Bharat Rama, but what actually is tax deducted at source? Okay, good. So some very honest and very sweet attempt has been done. Anu says from tax collection source in India, the means of collecting tax and income by requiring the payer to deduct tax before paying the balance to the payee. Very pointedly correct. Anu Gupta, very nice. So let's understand what actually these terms are. So what all your chapter 9 is about, let's start with it. Okay? So everyone, we'll touch about what these concepts actually are and then we'll proceed one by one. But first of all, to understand these terms, pehle, let me tell you one thing. Think yourself as a assessee. Abhi I'm using the word assessee. Who is an assessee? Anyone, individual, HUF, AOP, BOI, firm, company, right? So assessee. Now, if you earn, I'm just making a random computation. If you're earning 13 lakhs an year, you will pay income tax on it. To whom? To the department. This is the story. Your income would be 13 lakh. Your tax liability would be computed on income tax on the income, and that you give it to the department or the income tax authority, right? So the income never is 13 lakhs minus the income tax amount. It is always this part. It is always this part. So suppose I'm not correctly computing, but 2 lakh is the liability. So you deposit 2 lakh to the government, right? Now we know for sure one concept that the income earned in the previous year is assessed in the assessment year. So whatever you're earning in 21-22 is assessed by filing an income tax return for the assessment year 22-23. This matter of fact is clear. Hence, before you file your return of income, you can deposit this 2 lakhs ka tax. You can deposit this 2 lakhs ka tax. Correct. Income on कब हुआ 31 previous year 21-22 में. Tax and assess कब होगा? Assess means compute कब होगा? When you will sit and analyze only when the previous year is over. That would happen in 22-23. Correct. You will pay this tax. Simple. I think we all know this. Ma'am, इसमें नया क्या? Now think yourself from the income tax department. You have to wait for an entire year to get the tax. Number one. Okay, previous year 21-22 pura you will spend on, and then you will wait, and then you will get a tax from it, right? So government thought what we can do is to earn some revenue during the previous year itself. So they came up with two concepts, actually three, but one is advance tax, another is TDS TCS. What did I say? So the government came up with the idea of earning revenue in the previous year itself. Revenue means tax part. Government ka revenue is the tax part. In the previous year itself, instead of waiting for the assessment year to come and you to pay the liability and compute it. So they came up with the concept of advance tax. Now what is advance tax? As the name suggests, tax paid in advance. This liability of 2 lakhs, which had to be paid in assessment year 22-23, the government say pays me in previous year 21-22 itself, pay me in previous year 21-22 itself on the basis of estimation. You estimate your tax liability for the year, okay, and then installment may paid to me in advance. Simple. This is advance tax. मैंने क्या किया? Now think yourself as assessing. The 2 lakhs which you had to pay when you were filing the return of income in assessment year 22-23. Now this 2 lakhs go in installments you pay in previous year 21-22 itself. Why it is advanced? Because liability was to be paid in 22-23. You're paying it now. That's why it's called advance tax. That's why it's called advance tax. Tax which is paid in advance. How you paid? On estimation. What are the detailed provisions? We'll see it in the coming classes. One thing, this is again a liability on assessee. Advance tax wala, right? You all agree? Assessee has to compute on his own estimate. Okay, I will earn this much during the year. This much would be the tax liability during the year. Everything is on estimation. This much I'll pay and this much I'll not pay. Okay. This much in this installment I'll pay. But assessee, how will government ensure that the assessee is an honest person? He may evade tax. He may not pay tax. Right? He may not pay tax and he may evade tax, or he may not be an honest assessee, or he may not show the true estimation of what the income is. So the government came up with option number 2, which is TDS and TCS. What is TDS TCS? TDS TCS is tax deducted at source. First of all, let's understand TDS. Now this is all, students, I'm repeating, it's a snippet of what we'll be doing. So just to make you understand the chapter overview, okay? So tax deducted at source. Source क्या होता है? कहाँ से income generate होता है? From where you generate the income. So tax deducted at source means, so suppose I have rental income. So who would be my source? The tenant. If I have salary income, who would be my source? The employer. If I have interest income from bank, who is my source? The bank. Right? So they will make me the payment. I will get the income, they will make me the payment, correct? So while making the payment, they will deduct a certain amount, a certain percentage. They will deduct a certain percentage and they will deposit that percentage to the government on my behalf. On my behalf means जिसका ये income है. Who is the payer? Who is the payer? नहीं समझ आया? So source कौन है? Tenant, employer, bank, right? They will make the payment to whom? To the payer, who will you say assessee, but here we'll use the term payer or the deductee. So while making the payment, the source itself will deduct an amount. The source will itself deduct an amount and deposit it to the government. On behalf of the payer, who's the assessee here. ये क्यों किया गवर्नमेंट ने? Because government will introduce advance tax thought, okay, we'll be receiving revenue during the year, but they may not be a true representation, or someone might skip an income and evade tax. So they ensure that जहां से income generate हो रहा है, from where the income is generated, let's put a liability on them. So they put a liability on whom? On tenant, on employer, and bank. Liability is a compliance liability that you will deduct TDS on this person's behalf and deposit to us. So if I take an example, I am receiving rent from Mr. X. Rent is my income, correct? Mr. X is my tenant. He pays me 2,40,000. My income would be 2,40,000. His expense would be 2,40,000. Simple. Now take another example. I am receiving rent of 3 lakhs. What is my income? 3 lakhs. What is his expense? 3 lakhs. But government says that TDS liability is there. That is, the source has to deduct tax before making the payment. The source has to deduct tax on making the payment, and there are flat rates. So there is this flat rate. Suppose at 10% he has to deduct TDS. So he will deduct 30,000 and give to me 2,70,000. So what entry he will make? The entry which he will be making would be, first of all, when he will be making due, he will make rent account debit. Rent कितने का है? 3 lakh. ठीक है? To me. So suppose I am Miss R. Okay. To Miss R, how much amount, and to TDS payable, how much amount? Because out of this 3 lakh, how is the payment to be dispersed? Only 270 has to go to the account of Miss R, and 30,000 has to go to the account of TDS payable. TDS payable क्यों है? Because this is the amount which he has to pay to the government. Now when he will be making payment, the TDS payable to bank for the TDS deposited with the government, which is 30,000. And when he will be making me the payment, it would be Miss R to bank. 270. So students, now this stage, when I made Mr. X made an entry in his books of account of rent to Miss R to TDS payable, this is a stage where we call the tax is deducted. The tax is deducted. Even if he's making the payment on later stage, we say the tax is deducted at the stage where he's making a due entry. And this, when he deposits to the government, जब आप narration में लिखोगे tax deposited to the government, that is called deposit of TDS. Okay. Now I want to make you think and say, what is the expense for Mr. X? Is it 270 or is it 30 or is it 3 lakhs? The expense which he'll take it in P&L would be 3 lakh. What is the income for me? Is it 270 or 30? Because bank में तो मुझे 270 आया, right? Bank में how much I received? 270. So whether the income is 270 or 3 lakh, the answer is 3 lakhs. It is not 270. Ma'am, why? Because suppose TDS would not have been there, my income would have been 3 lakh. I from my pocket would have been depositing 30,000. But abhi kya hua hai? Mr. X is deducting it and depositing it to the authority on my behalf. Mr. X को कोई benefit नहीं हो रहा of this tax. For him, the cash outflow, listen, for him, the cash outflow is 3 lakhs only. But instead of paying you the 3 lakhs, how is he dividing? 270 to you and 30,000 to the government on behalf of you. And for you also, the income is 3 lakh. But what has happened? 270 came into your bank and 30,000 was deposited to the government on behalf of you. So that's why I started from this first story of you earning the income and depositing the tax, which is making impact on your cash flow, but the income remains the same. Similarly, here also, the income is this. The cash flow is 270. The 30 has been deposited on behalf of you to the government. Okay? And who deposited it? Mr. X deposited it. Why he deposited it? Because compliance है उन पे. Why there is a compliance on him? Because there is written, if you relate now to your PGBP income, section 40AI or IA, if you relate to these sections, anyone remember these are the disallowance section that if the TDS is not deducted, expenditure would not be allowed. So to ensure that Mr. X deduct TDS, they say if you will not deduct the TDS, we will not give you the benefit of 3 lakhs. So that's why Mr. X is very ensurable that I have to deduct TDS. He is very determinable that I have to deduct TDS, and he has to deposit it obviously to the government. So both these entries have to be done before filing the return of income. This is not in your TDS section. This is there in your PGBP section. Relate your sections from one to another. So this is the story of TDS. Let me just give you one more detail and then I'll take your questions. So how does it happen? Up now, in all this entire chapter, you don't have to think yourself, especially when we're talking about TDS, as Miss R. You are the deductor. TDS is all from the point of view from the source. The person who deducts the tax becomes the deductor. And the person for whom the tax is deducted is deductee. He is the payer. He's making the payment. He's the payer. And he or she is the payee. Right. Now, one more thing you have to remember. How, for Mr. X, how this whole criteria will go. He will first deduct the TDS, which is this entry which we saw. This is deducting the TDS. उन्होंने deduct करके separate account में डाल दिया. Okay. Then he will deposit the TDS. This is all for TDS. Okay. He will deposit the TDS, which is this entry. Okay. Then he files the return of income. Return of TDS. Then he files the return of TDS. Return, whenever return word is there, return is nothing but a statement. A statement of how much TDS is deducted, on whose behalf the TDS is deducted, and all of these things. And then he issues you the certificate. Then he issues you a certificate. To whom? To the payee. That, okay, I have deducted so and so much TDS. I have deducted so much so and TDS for so and so on quarter, and this is your insurance that this is the TDS deducted. Why this certificate is important? Because kal ko deductor deducts the amount. He pays me only 270. 30 he deducted, but he has not deposited to the government. He has taken my 30,000. He has not deposited to the government. That means what? That means there is some jol, right? So to ensure that he has deducted the TDS, deposited to the government on my behalf, a certificate is issued by the payer to pay. So it's not a certificate which you make it at home. It's a certificate which is generated after the return is filed in Form 16 or 16A. So this is the entire story of TDS. Now going forward, there are multiple sections. There are multiple sections under which the TDS is deducted depending upon the nature of payment. If the nature is rent, then there is a separate section. If the nature is interest, there is a separate section. If the nature is salary, there's a separate section. So there are separate sections for deduction of TDS. TDS is not deducted under a particular section. There are separate sections. Students, if you understand this entire story of TDS and how the income tax, all of these things work, understanding chapter 9 and even chapter 10 would be very easy. So now tell me if there's any doubt up till now. Very good, Preeti. Anyone has any doubt? This is just an overview of why the concept is, what is the concept, how the things work. So that now when we'll be doing each section step by step, you know how the things are. So now it would not be a curveball on you that, oh, deducted kya hota hai, deductee kya hota hai, what is what. I hope everything is clear. Take a moment to understand it. खुद को समझाओ. No problem. We'll wait for a minute and we'll begin again. Yes, a payer will deduct TDS on behalf of payee. Payer कौन हुआ? The source, right? जिसने payment करना है, that is the word payer, right? He only has the power to deduct TDS because he has to make the payment, right? So there's one more concept, TCS, but I will not plug in it here because first, now when we have started TDS, now let's go to the journey of TDS only, okay? करेक्ट रमा. अब TDS का एक very important thing which you pointed out. अब क्या हुआ? Everyone please on the screen. Now this 30,000 का क्या होगा? What would happen to this 30,000? This is with department on your behalf, which is Miss R की account में. The department knows that Miss R का tax amount which is deposited to me of 30,000 by Mr. X. I am the department. Department के पास 30,000 आया है for Miss R. By whom? Mr. X. But आया किसके लिए है? For Miss R. Now what will happen? They will give the credit of this 30,000. Credit समझते हो क्या होता है? The amount which is given for the benefit of. They will give the credit of this 30,000 to Miss R. The moment the return is filed by the deductor, the moment the return is filed by the deductor, government को पता चलेगा that this 30,000 belongs to Miss R. So they will give the credit of this 30,000 to Miss R. Now, when Miss R, who will file her return in assessment year 22-23, she can take the benefit of this 30,000. She can take the benefit of this 30,000 while filing the return. So, suppose if the tax liability of Miss R for her total income, including this rent of 3 lakhs, for her total income comes to, suppose, 2 lakhs rupees. And 30,000, she already has a credit, right? 30,000 credit है, किसी ने already मेरे behalf पे deposit करा दिया. TDS is nothing, you depositing the tax by your own on your income. Someone else is depositing the tax on your income, who is the source. ठीक है? So 30,000 मेरा TDS का credit आ जाएगा, and 2 lakhs minus 30, 170 would be the tax which I have to deposit. Obviously, I may have deposited 1 lakh as advance tax also, so 70,000 would be the tax which I will deposit. So this is all how the things work. Ma'am, how will I know that 30,000 is deposited? One is certificate, another is there is a statement called Form 26AS. First day when you go into your articleship, this thing would be asked from you, what is 26AS? Or do you know 26AS? Or please fetch out a 26AS for Miss R. So what you will go, you will log into the income tax login portal of Miss R. You will put in the details. There is this statement called Form 26AS. You will download it. It shows the tax which are deducted by different sources for Miss R. So it's a statement for Miss R where she'll see कि okay, इसने मेरा इतना tax काटा है, इसने मेरा इतना tax काटा है, this much tax is deducted on this much amount, this much tax is deducted on this much amount. So this is Form 26A. So do not go ahead. ये क्या होता है? Though this is a very practical thing which you will do, but you should know these very common things. Form 16, Form 26A. Form 16 is what? Which the deductor issues to the deductee after filing the return. And Form 26A is same amount which is there in the certificate gets reflected in the statement. Certificate is per deductor. Har ek deductor will give you the certificate. Form 26A is the entire statement on which all the deductions are there. ठीक है? The income, Rafiq bhai, would be 3 lakhs, not 2.7 lakhs. Income is the same. Had this been your income, you would have deposited 30,000. Had there been an income on which you yourself has to deposit the tax, तो 2.7 तो नहीं हो जाता ना, वो 3 lakhs ही रहते हैं, right? That's why in the first part, before beginning this entire thing, I said that when you're depositing on income tax of 2 lakhs on an income of 13 lakhs, you will never say your income is 11 lakhs, right? Similarly, 3 lakh का income पे किसी ने 30,000 आपके behalf पे deposit करा दे, you will not say that it is the income is 2,70,000. Okay. Pooja, advanced tax सारे provisions will do one by one. The first 2 classes will be entirely dedicated to TDS and TCS, and advanced tax would be your 3rd class. Okay. This is a very important chapter. You do it now, and from the final level, I think it is one of the most important chapter. So please, and obviously you will be doing it on a daily basis if you go for an audit also, or if you go for if you are into a CA firm as an article, every day you have to make TDS ka entries when the tax is deducted. So all of these things, this is a very important chapter. Obviously from the point of view of your exam also, but the moment you enter your articleship, this chapter, if you know, is everything. It will give you an edge. Anu, in this chapter, as per your syllabus, will be understanding the TDS rate which were applicable for 21-22. Yes, advanced tax is mandatory for few TDS. Correct, Jyoti has summed up it very nicely. TDS is our money from which we can take benefit when we file income tax return. So instead of saying TDS is our money, just say TDS is our tax. TDS is मेरा tax. अगर किसी ने मेरा TDS काटा है, that means it is my TDS. It is my tax. Instead of me going and depositing it to the government, someone else has deposited to the government. Government wants to ensure कि source अपना काम सही से करे. Source, अगर tax is collected from the source itself, government is relaxed. Okay, now I am getting the tax from the source only. जिसका जहां से income generate हुआ है. So अब कल को if the other person even evade a bit, I will get to know because I know the income is generated. I know the income is generated. Okay, so government wants to ensure कि source beta, you do all your work, all your homework. I will catch hold of the assessment. If he does not tell this income, or if he tells the tax, or if he shows that the tax is less, all of those things. So Preeti, you definitely know how important TDS is, right? So Mesh, what is your doubt? When these deduction of TDS, either after deduction chapter or before slab computation? Claim. Okay. If TDS is deducted in excess of the amount which is your tax amount, it would be refundable. So one more thing, Sumesh, and I think there's another query of Pooja. Everyone on the screen, please. इसी 2 लाख वाले एग्जाम्पल को लेट्स डिफाइन इट थोड़ा सा. TDS कब डिडक्ट होगा? इन द प्रीवियस ईयर 21-22, previous year financial year 21-22. That is as and when the source, the income is generated, right? Correct. The TDS would be deducted in previous year 21-22. You will file your income tax return in assessment year 22-23. Suppose there was 3 lakh का rent and 9 lakh का TGBP income. Okay. 3 lakh के rent पे already 30,000 TDS is deducted in the previous year 21-22 itself. 9 lakh का TGBP income. Now suppose my total income is coming to 12 lakh. So I'm assuming the tax liability would come after all these deductions. Income is 12 lakh. Okay. After all the deduction, tax liability is 2 lakh. 30,000 ka TDS already is deducted. So I will get the credit of that while filing the return of income. Okay, number 1. And फिर I also assume that I have paid advance tax ka liability. Everything is for the same year, of this year only, of 1 lakh. So then 70,000 is the tax which I will deposit. Think yourself here as Miss R. Okay. Think yourself here as Miss R or the payee or the deductee, whatever you feel like. Okay. So अब मेरे को 2 टाइप का इनकम हुआ, 3 लाख का, 9 लाख का. 3 लाख पे 30,000 का TDS already deducted है, but my income for the entire year would be 3 plus 9, 12 lakh. 12 lakh पे tax liability come to 2 lakh. 2 lakh पे 30,000 TDS is already deducted. I have the certificate. It is there in my form 26AS. 170. 170 में से 1 lakh advance tax. Suppose I paid it during the year. 70,000 would be the liability, which I will take it as self-assessment tax. Self-assessment means I assessed this liability. And then only I will be able to file the return of income. अब समझ आया? Somesh, Pooja. Now suppose if the TDS is deducted more and the tax liability is less, you will get the refund. Sneha, what is 130? Yes, exactly, Kiran. I will take the credit of whatever my source has deducted the tax. उन्होंने क्या किया just to ensure. So first I explained the concept why
just to ensure that the government gets timely the tax. He said, okay, bhai, the source will pay the tax for the person who is earning the income. $70,000 Siddhartha, 70,000 tax still is unpaid, right? That tax is deposited by me during the assessment year as self-assessment tax. Category self-assessment. If I deposit some tax during the previous year, that is advance tax. If I deposit some tax during the assessment year before filing the return, that is self-assessment. अब किसी को कोई doubt, I think from now you will be able to relate it much better and you can explain it to anyone what TDS actually is. Akashni, you can say TDS credit is made available to pay not to avoid double taxation. Double taxation is not a concept. आपने बहुत commonly simply ये word use कर लिया. Double taxation is when the same income is taxed twice. This is not a double taxation concept. It is simple that the tax liability has been paid or deposited by someone else on behalf of the assessee. That's it. And that's why assessee is getting the credit. Deductor या payer अपने behalf से pay नहीं कर रहा. He had to give a cash outflow of 3 lakh. He is giving a cash outflow of 3 lakh, but 30,000 to the government, 270 to the Miss R. And Miss R had an income of 3 lakh. She's getting an income of 3 lakh, but 270 in the bank account and 30,000 on behalf of Miss R to her bank account as tax. कैश फ्लो के कॉन्सेप्ट से सो ठीक है दिस इज नॉट डबल टैक्सेशन no Pooja, you will first calculate the total tax based on the slab dates, then you will reduce the credits which I have. Pehle I will compute my liability, then I will reduce my credits. And credits of what? Credits of TDS, advance tax deposited, all of those things. अब सबने कोई thumbs up दे दो so that we can proceed now. So Mesh, I will come to this example. Any other query? Thank you. Chalo. So now let's up. जैसे we do the heads, it would be mode flip. Now, so I was telling you each section, there are different sections 192 onwards. There are different sections under which TDS is deducted. Different section under which TDS is deducted. And that section depend upon the nature of payment. So suppose we are talking about salary payment, that would be covered under 192. If you're talking about interest payment, that would be covered under 194A. All of these things would go like that. Okay? So this is your homework also, and your otherwise also. What you have to do is take a double paper, make the column first would be section. This is there in your the module also, but I want you to self-do it. Okay? Section, nature of payment. Who is the deductor? Obviously, the payer. Who is the deductee? TDS has to be deducted at some flat rate. But what are the rates of TDS? What is the threshold limit? What is the time of deduction? And
other remarks or other points to remember. I want you to make this table for each section. I'll say again, section, nature of payment, deductor or payer, or deductee or payee, TDS rate, threshold limit, time of deduction, other ones. And why is it important? Because in each section, we will look for these things. Who has to deduct the tax? Obviously, you'll say the payer, but whether everyone has to deduct the tax, for whom the tax has to be deducted, basically, on whom such section would be applicable. TDS rate क्या होगा? Threshold limit क्या होगा? What would be the time of deduction? Time of deduction means वो जो entry I showed you when that deduction has to happen. Okay, so deduction generally the deduction happens when the amount is due or paid, whichever is earlier. Now, during all this time, think yourself as the source, the payer, okay? Due or paid, whichever is earlier. Now, what does this mean? Due क्या होता है when the amount is due to be paid, and paid is when actually you paid. So if you're making an advance payment, you will deduct the TDS then, or if the due is done first, you will deduct the TDS then. Example, जैसे rent वाला था. Rent account debit to Miss R to TDS payable. Here you were not making the payment, but it was getting due. The rent was getting due, that's why you made this entry. So due, if due is earlier or payment is earlier. Suppose I have given an advance tax payment. So then also Miss R to bank advance tax and your to TDS payment. So if I'm making an advance tax payment, so उसमें से 10% has to be deducted. Okay. This is payment. So when you will, if whichever is earliest, so suppose I'm making an advance tax payment of rent, then I will make this entry अभी rent due नहीं हुआ. If I'm making the first, I'm doing the rent which dues for the entire month, and then I paid, then that is due is earlier. Okay. So due or paid, whichever is earlier. Now let's start. First section, very, very important section and extremely different section from all of these. Section 192. This section का calculation, this section की provisions are totally different from other sections. So please understand this section very carefully. Section 192, TDS on salary. So here we are talking about the income which is in the nature of salary. Who would be the deductor? Who would be the deductor? The employer. Think yourself as the employer. Who would be the deductee? Any person who is the employee. So TDS under section 192 would be deducted only when the income is in the nature of head of salary. That means when the payment would be taxed under the head salary for this person, then only you will deduct the TDS under section 192. Who you is deductor. Now again and again when I say you will deduct, you are the deductor. So you are the employer. When the income would be taxed as salary under this person head, then only you will deduct the TDS. And for salary, what is important? Employer-employee relationship, right? For salary, what is important? Employer-employee relationship. If this relationship is missing and you are making a payment, if this relationship is missing and you are making a payment of TDS, you will not deduct the TDS under this section. It may be deducted under separate section, but not under section 192. But not under section 192. So who has to deduct the TDS? Employer. So can I say when a salary is paid to firm, paid to partner by firm, will it be covered under this section? No. Why? Even if it is in the nature of salary, first there is no employer-employee relationship, and for partner, this salary is the PGBP income, not the salary income. Correct? Yes or no? So who would deduct the TDS? Employer for employee. Employee can be any person, whether resident or non-resident, does not matter. You are making a payment for salary taxable in India, you have to deduct the TDS. You have to deduct the TDS. Clear? Now, next question I've told you is the rate. Now, for TDS, there are flat rate 1%, 2%, 10%, so on. Okay? But for salary, there is a concept called average tax rate. And ये क्या होता है? इसको रट्टा नहीं मारते. Let's understand it. I'll explain you how we'll do it. No worries. The rate is the average tax rate. How it is computed, let me tell you. No problem. Threshold limit. When a person would deduct the TDS? When the salary paid is more than the basic exemption limit. When the salary paid is more than the basic exemption limit. Ma'am, what is the basic exemption limit? That you have to tell me. What is the basic exemption limit? $250,000, 3 lakhs and 5 lakhs. Very good. Okay? So, if I'm making the payment of salary of 1 lakh, whether I have to deduct the TDS? No. Because just threshold limit triggered hoga, only then the employer has to deduct the TDS. If I'm making a payment of salary of 5 lakhs, do I have to deduct the TDS? Yes. But now, ma'am, how the TDS is computed under salary? Again, I'm saying it is different from other heads, so you have to pay attention. What the employer does, employer prepares a mini computation of all the employees for whom he is making the payment. He can think yourself as employer. I know how much salary I have to pay you during the year. Correct? So he prepares a mini computation of income tax for every person. So if I have employer number 1, I have employer number 2. What I will do, I will make a mini computation. Ma'am, what is mini computation? I know that this person only has salary income. Okay? So I'll take his salary income. And how will I know the salary income? I am the employer. I know how much is the salary income. Suppose salary income during the year is 7 lakh after 50,000 deduction. Okay? There is no other income of employee. There is no other income of employee. So employee number 1 and employee number 2, sorry. There is no other income of employee. Total income of employee is what? 7 lakhs. Is pe tax kitna aaya? Quickly tell me the tax amount. Where's my calculator? How much is the tax amount on 7 lakh? With cess. With cess, Rafiq bhai, how much is the tax amount for 7 lakhs? Very good. So first answer is given by Memon Rafiq bhai. Good. At the beginning of the year itself, what did I say? Employer, you think yourself as employer, will make mini computation. So he knows 54,600 would be the tax liability. He knows 54,600 would be the tax liability. So what does Rafiq bhai will do? He knows that itna tax liability hai. This is the tax which I have to deduct. during the year, during the entire year, this is the tax liability I have to deduct. So what does he do? What does he do? Now the salary is paid every month. The salary is paid every month. So he will divide this tax liability by 12. And every month when he's paying the salary, he will deduct the TDS of 4550 from every month's salary, because he computed the entire TDS liability which is coming on salary, and then he distributed that entire TDS liability for every payment of salary. Okay? This is for employee 1. Now, what did I say? That you have to prepare a mini computation. You are a deductor. For every person, you have to prepare a mini computation. Now, this person, employee 2, comes and he says, कि sir, मेरा salary तो आपको पता है, it is 5 lakh. But sir, I have a house property income also. I have a house property income also. So he said, okay, tell me. I am the employer. I said, okay, tell me. So he said, sir, house property ka income is 3 lakh ka. ठीक है, I considered it. Sir, I have 80C ka deductions also. 80D ka deduction also. Premium pay कर रहा हूँ for mother and father both. 50,000 का. ठीक है, मैं बता दो. बता दिया. मैंने अपना mini computation में ये भी ले लिया. Now the income comes to 7,50,000. Now, first of all, the question which you might be thinking is, ma'am, why are we considering all of these things? House property, deductions, all of these things. So the income tax section 192 says that if an employee tell you the details of other income, and deductions, they are telling you the details of other income and deduction. They are not liable to tell you the details, but think they are telling you the details of their other income and deductions, then you have to consider them. तो जो आप mini computation बनाते हो for each employee, उसमें हर employee के computation में जो उन्होंने बताया है, what all the employee has told, you have to consider it. What all the other incomes except salary, because salary I know कितना payment हो रहा है, but house property, other deductions, वो I have to take in note. Ma'am, how will they take it note? So generally क्या होता है in practical life, at the beginning of the year or when the employee joins, they take a declaration from the employee that what are all your other incomes, what are all your deductions, so that we can take it. Now you will say कि ma'am employee क्यों बताएगा अपना other income, right? You will ask, ma'am, why will employee tell his other income? Employee will tell his other income because he want to sit back and relax. Okay, I don't have a judgment of paying advance tax. Everything would be computed by the employer. He will calculate the TDS not on 5 lakh now. He will calculate the TDS on the entire income because he is making a mini computation. And I don't have to worry. He will calculate the tax on this entire income and divide it into mini installments of every month and pay it to the government on my behalf. I do not have to take a sarkhapai of paying advance tax, computing tax again and all those things, right? So that's why most of the people tell their other incomes. And why do they tell other deductions? Because they want to ensure that the TDS on salary gets lower. Dekho, in hand salary zyada chahiye. In hand means jo mere bank account mein hai. What comes in my bank account? So they give other deductions also. And what if we have loss? Can we give the loss? Can we give the loss? So suppose I have loss from my business income. Can I tell them? The answer is no. No loss can be accepted by the employer except house property loss. Except house property loss. House property loss ke alawa, the employer will not consider anything in your mini computation. Okay? He will consider all the incomes, he will consider all the deductions, but he will only consider house property loss and no other loss. and no other loss. Okay? While computing it, he'll make a mini computation for every employee. Then on whatever the income is coming, on this he will compute the tax. On this he will compute the tax, and then every month he will deduct that tax. Every month he will deduct that tax. So 7,50,000 पे tax liability क्या आएगा with cess 65,000. So every month he will deduct 5,416. Now you will ask 5,417. Okay, you will ask, ma'am, कैसे पता चलेगा about the deductions? I can tell whatever my deduction is. No. So starting of the year, you will give the declaration, but by the end of the year, you have to give them the proof. As an employee to the employer, you have to give them the proof. Employer needs the proof that you have done all these deductions. For house property loss, you will give the interest certificate. For ATD, you will give the premium receipt. For ATC, you will give the premium receipt. If you're claiming any other deduction, we have to give them the proof of it. Then only they will consider it. Otherwise, they will increase the tax amount if you will not give them these proofs. Okay? Okay, so now tell me, as an employee, for employee number 3, how much you will compute the tax liability if his salary income is after 50K, after standard deduction, the salary income is 9 lakhs, and he has given you the following declarations. Oh. This is 1,50,000. House property loss, 1 lakh. Other sources income, 2,20,000. Quickly tell me what would be the monthly tax salary, monthly tax deducted on salary payment. What would be the monthly tax deducted on salary payment for employee number 3? So these are the declarations made to you. The deductor will provide the TDS certificate, Sushil. TDS is only deducted by the source. Advanced tax liability is different. Kaveri, see, forget about deducting twice and all those things. First, understand the normal part. Then make these hypothetical situations. Some hypothetical situations में इतना खो जाते हैं that we do not understand the actual concepts. Other sources is 220. The first one to give this answer correct will deserve a shout out. What is the monthly TDS that has to be deducted by the employer? So the first one to give the correct answer is Manchu. Very well done. Then I got correct answer from Kaveri. Then I got correct answer from Akash Neel. Very good. The total income is coming for 850. Very good. Tax is 85,800 for the entire year. Every month he will deduct 7150. No Pooja. No Srinivasan. Very good, Ayush. Because Swati, I told you that this amount is after standard deduction. पेपर में अगर कुछ नहीं लिखा होता सैलरी के लिए कि whether the amount is before standard deduction or after, then you will write your assumption clearly and then you will do the paper. ठीक है? But if it is clearly written after standard deduction or computed, or if the amount computed is written, that means it is after standard deduction. ठीक है? The tax liability is 85,800 students, and you have to deduct a monthly tax of 7150. No 7012. Siddhappa and everyone, listen carefully. 9 lakh का TDS salary. उन्होंने declaration दिया 150/20, which I will deduct from the total computation. Mini computation बनाना है. Okay, house property loss है 1 lakh का. Other sources का income है 220 का. I think the total income is coming to 8,50,000. Nine lakh minus 150 and 20, 170 minus 1 lakh 630. Basically, first you have to 9 lakh minus 1 lakh plus 220 minus 150 minus 20, 8,50,000. Uspe you have to compute 3,50,000 with 20% plus 12,500 plus 4% of cess, which you may have forgot, 85,800 divided by 12, 7150. हाँ गलती करा जिसको नहीं क्लियर हुआ. So I think everyone did it. It is clearly written after standard deduction. So every month, suppose I have to pay, I'm an employer. So if suppose every month I have to pay 80,000 ka salary every month, then I will deduct 7150 and then I will pay you the net amount. Even if the 7150 is on the entire computation, but this is how the salary payment works. Okay, this is how the salary TDS works. Every month I am paying you as an employer 80,000. So usme se every month I will reduce the TDS of 7150. So 72,850 would be your cash flow, which you will receive as salary in your bank account. इसमें और भी concept है. Now another concept which you have to take care is there is this special section called 115 BAC. I hope you have done it or probably you'll be doing it. This is a special tax computation section जहाँ पे slab rates change 0 to 2,50,000, no tax, 2,50,000 to then 5 lakh, then goes on 5%, 10%, 15, 12, 25, 5, 10, 15, 25 and 20, 25, so on. Okay, this is a special section of computation of tax liability. Okay, so if an employee says that I want to compute the tax liability as per this section, then you will compute the tax liability as per this section. Okay, but this the employee has to come up and say. You will not automatically compute it as per this section. Another thing at your level, there are many concepts, but I'll be taking up those which are relevant at your level. Okay. Another thing which at your level you have to remember is, ma'am, tell me one thing. I can change the job during the year, right? Suppose I was working with ABC Limited for first 5 months. Then for the next 7 months, I am working with PQR Limited. What will happen then? So ABC Limited के साथ suppose I heard on the salary of 4 lakh. अब ABC Limited ने entire year करके they must have computed it, but they computed it. So once they stop making the salary payment, they stop making the TDS. Okay, and they deducted the TDS. So this is for 5 months. Okay, and let's say they deducted the TDS of roughly of 20,000 for the 5-month salary. Now I joined PQR Limited. PQR Limited, maybe I have to give my, this is from practical point of view, I have to tell them my other incomes, right? So I told them, okay, what are all my other income? Do I have to tell this salary income which I earn from ABC Limited? The answer is yes. Again, there is no way a mandate to tell, but it is always recommended to tell. Why? I'll explain you. PQR Limited ने अपना सैलरी कंप्यूट किया, राइट? थिंक वेरी केयरफुली. उन्होंने आपके अदर इनकम ले लिया, ठीक है? And then they computed the TDS liability by taking the basic exemption limit and all those stuff, correct? This is what we do. But suppose 4 lakh you have already earned before, and if you will not tell this to PQR Limited, on which already 20,000 tax is deducted, what will PQR Limited do? They will take the basic exemption limit का benefit फिर से. They will take the basic exemption limit का benefit फिर से, and on this 4 lakh पे भी basic exemption limit का benefit है, right? On this 4 lakh पे भी basic exemption limit का benefit है. What will happen when you will file your return of income as Mr. X, who is the employee of this company? You will see there's a difference between the tax liability. Even if you told इनको पूरा income except the salary, but there is still a tax liability difference is coming. There is still a tax liability difference is coming. Why? Because basic exemption limit का benefit इन्होंने भी लिया, lower slab rates का benefit इन्होंने भी लिया और इन्होंने भी लिया. So because of which, when you will be filing your return of income, you will see there is a difference. Ma'am, can you please explain? Let me tell you one thing. Suppose ABC Limited के साथ आपका 4 lakh का salary था, okay, for 5 months. And now let's compute the actual figure. 4 lakhs पे how much TDS they would have deducted? Nil, because there was rebate 87 acre. Okay. Now for PQR Limited, in the 7 months, suppose you earned a salary of 8 lakhs. Okay. Suppose you earned a salary of 8 lakhs and you did not tell them about this 4 lakh. So after 50,000 the standard deduction, suppose 8 lakhs is coming. What they will do? They will compute the tax on this 8 lakhs and they will deduct the TDS. आपने 4 lakhs नहीं बताया to PQR. Okay, you have your own reason. What you would have done, 8 lakh पे TDS compute, tax compute किया होता आपने for 75,400 which says this TDS would have been deducted for 7 months. Okay. Now when you will file your return of income, you are relaxed कि इन्होंने भी TDS काट दिया जो बनता था, इन्होंने भी TDS काट दिया. Now think yourself as Mr. X. What will happen? Now you are sitting and filing your return of income and you think that मैंने सबको सब कुछ बताया है, the tax, there would be no tax liability. Now you're sitting here and saying 8 lakh का salary from TQL Limited under salary head, 4 lakh का salary from ABC Limited, right? 12 lakh, आपने 12 lakh income दिखाया. You were all chill कि भाई there is no tension, right? But now when you computed the TDS liability on this 12 lakh, you saw, oh God, मेरा 12 lakh पे tax is coming to 179,400. And you were like, only 75,400 is deducted. But मैंने तो सबको, मैंने 4 lakh भी बताया, मैंने 8 lakh भी बताया. But why TDS liability is coming here again? Because आपने इनको इसके बारे में नहीं बताया. You did not tell about this 4 lakh. And what happened here? Here basic exemption limit का benefit both of them took. Here tax rebate benefit took. Here आपका TDS benefit, here's lower slab rates benefit were took. But when the both combined, actually were a different scenario. That's why whenever you switch your jobs, always to the subsequent employer, tell about your previous salary, tell about your TDS deducted, so that they can compute the tax liability accordingly to avoid the goof up which happens at the later stage. Okay. Similarly, if you are having, this is nowhere written as an example, so you can copy it as an example that why it has to be given. There is only written that you should tell your salary income to the subsequent employer. But why you should tell your salary income to a subsequent employer is because of this reason. Similarly, if you're working with two employers simultaneously, tell your salary income to one of the employers so that they can compute the actual TDS liability by taking the proper income. ठीक है? So एक को बताना जरूरी है. Is it clear? किसी को कोई doubt? This explanation is the reason only of why the differences happen. $75,400 कैसा है? 3 lakhs पे 20% plus 12,500 plus 4%, 75,400. This is the tax liability. Siddhappa, here, listen everyone on the previous example. Every income has to be considered, every other deductions have to be considered, but only the loss of house properties to be considered. सब कुछ consider करना है, all incomes, even if it is a PGBP income, all deductions, no loss except house property. अगर आप मेरे को बोलते हो कि मेरा horse from maintaining race horses है, I will not consider it, but only house property loss. ठीक है? So if now I conclude section 192 for all of you, and this is थोड़ा सा टेढ़ा sections. What is the nature of payment? Salary. Who is the deductor? Employer. Who is the deductee? Employee. What is the TDS rate? Average tax rate, or the average tax computed as per the computation. Okay. Threshold limit, when the salary crosses the basic exemption limit. Time of deduction. Time of deduction, students. आपने बोला मैम आपने तो कहा था due or paid whichever is earlier. Yes, I told due or paid whichever is earlier. But here there are certain sections on which the TDS is only to be deducted at the time of payment. Here the TDS is only to be deducted when you are making the salary payment. Oh God, this is not working nicely for you. At time of payment. Okay. Other points which have to be remembered. All the losses have to, all the incomes have to be considered. Other deductions have to be considered. No loss has to be considered except house property. At your level, this is maximum. Other employers and other employee details have to be taken. 115 BAC has to be taken. Okay. There is a point of non-monetary perquisites and there's a point of startup, which I don't want to take it right now because I don't want to mess up with your base and make it complex. Okay. अब बताओ section 192 में किसी को doubt? Section 192 is an absolutely different section than other TDS sections which you will see in the second half of this class. But अभी तक किसी को कोई doubt? No loss which is declared by the employee to the employer has to be considered except house property loss, because house property loss ko you can justify through the interest certificate or the loan certificate which you get. ठीक है, other losses को कैसे justify करोगे at the beginning of the year? I know कि during the year I will be paying this much house EMI rent, so this is my section 24B की वजह से interest deduction, and this is what my loss would be coming. No other loss has to be given because they need proof ultimately. आप income जितना मर्जी बताओ, but you cannot reduce your tax liability by giving any loss. No TDS will be deducted by the employer, correct Pooja, if the threshold limit say less होगा 2,50,000. Average tax कैसे compute करोगे basis the monthly tax liability? We will be covering, Swati, the sections which are there given in your module. All those sections will be covered. And only those parts which are there in your module. %20 only, na ma'am. I did not get your concept. Only up to 2 lakh would be adjusted from the salary income. That is what you're saying. That is correct. Maximum 2 lakh. 20% वाला क्या concept है? Threshold limit क्या होगा, Sushil? When I'm giving, think yourself as an employer. When I'm making the payment to the employee for a salary of more than basic exemption limit, then I have to deduct the TDS. That's why maybe if you have, if any of your father is doing business and they have a helper or employees who are at a monthly payment of say 10,000, 20,000. That's why you might have not seen your father deducting TDS, because the salary is not crossing 2,50,000. The moment the salary crosses 2,50,000, that you have to tell to your papa that the TDS is required to be deducted. The provisions have to be taken care of. Pooja, that is not possible. 18,000 ka monthly salary pe no one would deduct TDS. If they are deducting TDS, that means you must have declared some other income. Rekha, for you, very quickly, whenever you are having salary from two different employers during the year, it is recommended to give your salary information to the subsequent employers so that they can compute it through taking the entire income of salary or the entire income which has been earned during the year, so that when you're actually computing your tax liability, there is no goof up. Why there would be a goof up? Because here kya hua? You did not tell about the salary of ABC Limited to PQR Limited. Here also, they took the benefit of slab rates and your 87A. Here they took the benefit of 87 slab rates and lower slab rates and basic exemption limit. That's why when you were paying that, you were filing your own return of income, the amount was coming much higher. The tax amount, this is not the TDS amount, the tax amount was coming much higher. However, the TDS is deducted only this much, but you were relaxed. I have given the salary details to both the employer, or the salary details has been given to both the employers, and they know the TDS has to be deducted. But why the difference is coming? Because the benefit of tax has been taken by both of them. That's why whenever you have income from two employers, either one by one or subsequent simultaneously, give the information to the subsequent employer so that they can take hold of what is the total income in real, and then they compute the tax. In Jameel, there is no turnover limit. All the person have to deduct the TDS. I did not understand your question, Himanshu. What are you trying to say? Can he claim employer from employer for such? No. आपको खुद सोचना है how much you want to tell. If you do not want to tell your other income, no problem. But be very careful that you may have to pay advance tax or you may have to pay other things. If you do not want to tell your salary, other salary income, no problem. But it is recommended so that you can sit back and relax of not paying any advance tax or of not paying any self-assessment tax. धीरे धीरे समझोगे, because this concept is very new for all of you. You have not done it in practical life, you have not studied it otherwise. So this concept is absolutely important, but I'll say take baby steps. Okay, so see you after break on around 8:35, and we'll do the coming sections of 192A, 193, 194A, 194, and if the time allows, 194C. Okay, so do come back on time. Welcome back, everyone. I hope we are through with the salary section. I think Pooja had a query that, ma'am, one of my friend has 18,000 the salary and TDS is deducted at 10% and no salary slip is there. So, Pooja, you answered the query. He's not the employee. He may be there as a retainership or on some other. He's not on payroll. He may be there as a professional and the TDS might be deducted under section 194J. You can see his 26 As and you will get to know about it. Okay. For all others, we have taken all the calculations of salary after standard deduction. So please, I hope if your answers are varying, it is because of that. Okay. So now let's begin. Yeah. So one person was asking that whether I'll be giving you the chart. Srinivasan Sir Ji, this is your homework to prepare the chart. There's a chart at the end of this chapter also, but I want you to prepare the chart. The reason is purely for you people to get hold of the concept, to remember that concept. Okay, I'll share the PPT if possible for the points which are which you have to remember, but this is your homework so that you remember it. Okay. Now, let's move ahead to another section which is 192A. तो अभी हमारा story कहाँ से start हुआ था? Section 192 से. Now we'll move ahead to section 192A. Okay, one second. Swati, not this class. I'm so sorry. Okay, I hope the screen is visible. So now let's start with another important section, 192A. Now what is 192A? TDS under section 192A. So this is generally, अब क्या होता है? Premature withdrawal from employees provident fund. Employee provident fund में पैसा जाता है, right? उसका period is who makes a contribution? Employer, employee. Both make equal contribution in most of the cases. Employer की contribution पे you get the interest, employee की contribution पे you get the interest. This is your total salary में जो आपने पढ़ा था, right? And इस PF के amount पे 5 years का continuous service होना चाहिए. If you can now relate, 5 years का continuous service होना चाहिए before withdrawal. Before withdrawal, right? Do you remember? And in PF, there should be 5 year का continuous service, as in 5 year का continuous contribution होना चाहिए from the employer and the employee, and there would be interest which would be given to you, and then you can withdraw the sum. Who will withdraw the sum? This is employee ka fund. So obviously employee will withdraw the sum, right? But what if he withdraws before 5 years, then the amount becomes taxable. If he withdraws after 5 years, nothing is taxable. But if he withdraws before 5 years, the amount is taxable. Yes, there are certain exceptions that if withdrawn before 5 years, it is taxable. But yes, the exceptions are that if there's a death of the assessee or the death of the employee or the business gets shut or the employee gets disabled to serve the job, then in those cases, even if you withdraw before 5 years, nothing would be taxable. So section 192A talks about the typical payment which is made before 5 years. That's why the section ka heading is, the nature of the payment here is premature withdrawal. Premature withdrawal from EPF. And that is when you withdraw it before 5 years. When you withdraw it before 5 years. Okay, who will deduct the TDS? Who will deduct the TDS? Any person will deduct the TDS. To whom the TDS would be deducted? Who is the deductor or the payer? Any person. Who is the deductee or the payee? The employee. Who is withdrawing the amount, right? He may be resident or non-resident. Correct? Yes. So who is the deductee? The resident or the non-resident employee. Now you will ask, ma'am, what is the next is what is the rate of TDS? Now, going forward from 192A onwards, the rates are flat rates. What are flat rates? If it is written 10%, then the TDS has to be deducted at 10%. If it is written 15%, the TDS has to be deducted at 15%. No surcharge or cess has to be added. Even if the income amount is of 10 lakhs or 50 lakhs or whatsoever, except few circumstances, no surcharge or cess would be added. Number 2, there would be thresholds for all of the sections. There would be threshold for all of the sections. Threshold जैसे ही trigger होगा, the moment you cross the threshold limit, on the entire amount the TDS would be deducted. So suppose if the threshold is 50,000 and you are paying 70,000, you say कि ma'am threshold trigger हुआ, so on the entire 70,000 the TDS at flat 10% has to be deducted. So if the threshold is 40,000, not on the difference of 20, but on the entire 70, the TDS has to be deducted. ये दो चीजें will remain constant throughout your understanding of TDS. Okay. Flat rates and threshold cross, okay, entire amount. Now coming back to section 192. What I was talking about is that this section is applicable on premature withdrawal of ETF, and that is when you make it before 5 weeks. The amount is taxable. The amount is taxable, but who will deduct the tax? The person who is making the payment from the fund, any person. To whom? The employee. The employee obviously would be withdrawing, whether resident or non-resident does not matter. The point is, what is the rate of TDS? The rate of TDS is 10% flat. What is the threshold? Threshold is that if the amount which is withdrawn is 50,000 or more, and the amount withdrawn is 50,000 or more, 50,000 or more, less than 50,000, no TDS. 50,000, yes TDS. 51,000, obviously TDS. So 50,000 or more, then the TDS has to be deducted. When the TDS has to be deducted? Time of deduction at time of payment. Just like salary, TDS here is also deducted at time of payment. That is when you're crediting the sum in the bank account of employee. At that time, you will deduct the TDS. So at time of payment, 5 answers match: deductor, deductee, rate, threshold, time of deduction. ठीक है? Any other point पे क्या आएगा? यहाँ पे एक चीज remember करना, there is this section that when you deduct TDS, you have to give your PAN. As per section 206AA, if you will not give your PAN, the TDS would be deducted at a higher rate of 20% or the rate of the section whichever is higher. So if you will not give your PAN, why PAN is important? Because then only they will deposit it on your behalf. Now, if I do not know the PAN number, how will I deposit it on your behalf? So PAN is very important. But here in this section, if you do not provide PAN, we will discuss section 206AA at stretch. But if the employee does not provide PAN, then the TDS would be deducted at MMR. MMR क्या होता है? How many of you know MMR? Maximum marginal rate. What is the maximum marginal rate? Can anyone want to make a wild guess? I'm assuming you people know MMR when we are at the end of the tax reduction, tax chapters. What is MMR? %30. Okay. Pooja is saying 30%. आपने MMR सुना है इससे पहले? Do you know what MMR is? अच्छा. Okay. 30% is surprisingly that you do not know MMR. No worries. No problem. No problem. MMR you will hear a lot when you are doing trust questions and or trust, मतलब not trust issue वाले questions, but trust का questions. No worries. I'll tell you what MMR is. MMR का मतलब होता है maximum marginal rate. Maximum marginal rate. This is the highest rate when we talk about. अब ये highest rate calculate किस होगा? Obviously highest rate is 30%. इस पे highest surcharge लगेगा. इस पे highest cess लगेगा, which is already 4%. So that is how you calculate your MMR. So 42.744% is the maximum marginal rate for previous year 21-22. किसी भी ईयर का हाईएस्ट टैक्स रेट जो इंडिविजुअल कैटेगरी पे है उससे हाईएस्ट सरचार्ज रेट जो इंडिविजुअल कैटेगरी पे है प्लस सेस वुड कम टू MMR. So 30 plus 37% plus 4%. If in the coming year the surcharge rate goes to 40%, then it will be 30 plus 40% plus 4%. 43.68%. So a bit 37% was not there and your 15% was the maximum surcharge rate. 35.88 was the maximum marginal rate. But previously 21-22 के लिए maximum marginal rate is 42.744%. Every year the maximum marginal rate will change depending upon the tax rate which are going on. Okay. Interesting. I got a very, very interesting question. What is PAN? I'll come to that. PAN number क्या होता है guys? What is PAN number? PAN number is your identification number in tax. For any SSC, Ram, Mohan, Sita, Ram can be the name of many people, right? So how will income tax identify you? Through a unique number called PAN number, permanent account number, PAN. Okay, for every SSC there is a PAN. You have to apply it in form 49A. You are allotted PAN Nowadays it is very instant. Based on your Aadhaar, immediately you are given a PAN number. आपका PAN नहीं है, tell your father mother to get it, or you can immediately download this. You can use download and get allotted a PAN number in just few minutes through instant allotment. ठीक है? So PAN number क्या होता है? Unique identification number under income tax, which is called permanent account number. 10 डिजिट का अल्फान्यूमेरिक नंबर होता है, सबका डिफरेंट नंबर होता है. ठीक है. एंड जो टीडीएस काटता है उसको टैन नंबर लेना होता है, विच इज टैक्स डिडक्शन एंड कलेक्शन अकाउंट नंबर. ही हैज टू ऑब्टेन टैन, he has to file an application. जिसको TDS deduct करना है, it is mandatory TAN for them. TAN is mandatory. So for deduction, he will, the moment he knows that I have to deduct the TDS, within 1 month he have to apply the TAN. ठीक है. He will collect from the deductee the PAN number, and when filing the return of income, the deductor will tell कि इस PAN के लिए इतना TDS मैंने डिपॉजिट कराया है, इस PAN के लिए इतना TDS डिडक्ट एंड डिपॉजिट है, इस PAN के लिए इतना TDS डिडक्ट एंड डिपॉजिट है. ठीक है. And assessee filed his return of income based on his PAN. PAN is your identification number. Maximum marginal rate clear हुआ. Now back to 192A. So premature withdrawal of EPF में जितना amount you're withdrawing from the EPF, उस पे TDS would be deducted at the rate of 10%. If the withdrawal is for 50,000 or more, who will deduct the TDS? Obviously the person, the trust who is giving you the payment of the withdrawal. ठीक है. Who will for whom the TDS would be deducted? For the employee who is withdrawing the sum. If he does not provide the TDS will be deducted on MMR. As simple as that, which you have to remember. इस section में कोई doubt particularly? Yes, all employees who have to deduct TDS will have, see, assessee will have PAN. They are all assessees also, but the moment you become a deductor, you will have to have a TAN. The moment you become a deductor, आपको TAN लेना जरूरी है, except few circumstances. Where 42 is a problem. 42.744%, 30 plus 37% plus 4%, you will get 42.744%. It is not 42%. MMR would be applicable when the employee does not provide his PAN number to the trust who is making the, or to the PF fund wala who is making the withdrawal ka payment. क्लियर हुआ सबको? किसी को कोई डाउट? 192A आपके लेवल पे probably is not very common to come, but what is important would be 194A and 194. So धीरे धीरे let's move ahead. Deductor को TAN number लेना है because he will deposit the TDS on the basis of TAN number. He has to take the PAN number from the person whose TDS is deducted so that he can tell the department कि मैंने इस person का TDS इस PAN के अंदर काटा है. Okay, and TAN number is a requirement. When you deduct the TDS, you have to obtain it. हर एक assessee का there is PAN number. When I say assessee, that means even anyone, employer, employee, anyone has their PAN numbers. But the moment they become deductors, they have to take the TAN number. उस TAN में कितना TDS deposit हुआ, the government will see, and then the deductor will tell that from this TDS which is deposited by me, इसमें से इतना इस बंदे का है, employee 1 का है, employee 2 का है, employee 3 का है, employee 4 का है, based on their PAN number. करेक्ट हिमांशु, सरचार्ज अगर आपने पैन नंबर प्रोवाइड नहीं किया, TDS would be deducted at MMR. ठीक है, चले आगे. Good. Another section which is there is TDS on interest on securities. What are securities? Like which are the bonds, your saving certificates, national development bonds, all of these your securities. No, PAN number is not related to PAN number. Correct, Pooja. It is. That's why it is said that you should provide PAN. Back to the screen, everyone. What is interest on securities? आपने securities खरीदा, आपने कोई government securities खरीदा, say suppose bonds, उस पे you get interest, उस पे you get interest. Who is paying you the interest? The government, right? Who is paying you the interest? The government is paying you the interest. So on this interest, they will deduct the TDS. TDS would be, who would deduct the TDS? Any person. But here the deductee is only when resident person. So if you're making a payment of interest to a resident person, think yourself as a deductor. If you're making a payment of interest on securities to a resident person, then only you will deduct the TDS under section 193. The rate of TDS is 10%. The rate of TDS is 10%. Here, the time of deduction is due or paid, whichever is earlier. Due or paid, whichever is earlier. Salary mein, when the payment is done, then you have to deduct the TDS. 192A mein, when the payment is done, then you have to deduct the TDS. But 193 and onwards, you will see when the amount is due, whether the interest is due, then you have to deduct the TDS, or when you are making the payment, whichever is earlier, then you have to deduct the TDS. Ma'am, threshold limit reh gaya. What is the threshold limit? There is no threshold limit as such, except few cases. There is no threshold limit. ठीक है? But ma'am, non-applicability, do we have to remember all of these things? The answer is no. I'll tell you few which are there on the list. Only those you can remember. Otherwise, it is not important to remember all of these. You can give them, what do you say? You can give them a reading look, and then you will see. There's no threshold limit as such, but there are few exceptions on which TDS under section 193 would not be deducted even if there are interest on securities. Even if there are interest on securities. Suppose, इसमें कौन-कौन सा आएगा? Like I have invested in the debentures of the company. I have invested in the debentures of the company. वहाँ से मुझे interest मिला. That would be covered under this section. So they will deduct the TDS under section 193 and then they will pay it to me. And then they will pay it to me. Okay. So first exception, I think you can note down the exceptions separately. This is TDS on interest on securities. Rate is 10%. Time of reduction is payment or due, whichever is earlier. Deductor, any person. Deductee, only resident person. Okay? So, आपके module में it is clearly written that when you are issuing 4% defense bond, इस पे interest मिलेगा आपको 4% के according. whenever it is written, this is the interest rate which you get. Okay. So on this interest, no TDS would be deducted. 4% national defense bond, no TDS would be deducted. National development bonds, no TDS would be deducted. National savings certificates, no TDS would be deducted. What is all important for you? All of these gold bonds, no TDS would be deducted. Now, what all are the common one? Let me discuss that. Exception 1. If debentures are issued by an Indian company or Indian public company, if debentures are issued by a public company, to whom? To individual, resident individuals and HUF, then TDS would be deducted on such interest only if the interest is more than 5,000. Interest up to 5,000 pe no TDS. So can I say up to 5K if the interest is there, no TDS, and this interest is paid obviously in any mode other than cash. But if it is more than 5,000, then only TDS. So if I'm receiving debentures interest during the year from a public company ka debentures and the interest is 3,000, will they deduct TDS? The answer is no. Interest is 10,000, will they deduct TDS? The answer is yes. How much? 10%. So 1,000 they will deduct the TDS and they will give it to me 9,000. This is the first exception which you have to remember. The first limit which is given for only individual and HUF. If debentures are issued by a public company to another firm and they will deduct the TDS on entire interest which is paid to them irrespective of the threshold limit. The threshold limit is only for individuals and HUF. Okay, number one exception which you have to remember. Then 54 EC, आपको याद है 54 EC capital gain? Just few weeks back we did. कौन से इसमें bonds issue होते हैं 5-year lock-in period वाले? Do you remember PFC bonds and IFRL bonds? These are also bonds. इससे भी interest होता है. But this interest would be not deductible for TDS. So I'm not saying these are not taxable. I'm saying the TDS would not be deducted on such interest. So 54 EC के bonds पे जो interest मिलता है, on that TDS would not be deducted. Then any interest which is paid to LIC or GIC. LIC or GIC क्या होते हैं? Life insurance company or general insurance company, if the interest is paid to them, no TDS would be deducted. No TDS would be deducted. LIC ने किसी bonds में invest किया, किसी भी bonds में, ठीक है? And they are getting the interest on it, and they are getting the interest on it. On that interest, TDS would not be deducted. On that interest, TDS would not be deducted. ठीक है? Any bonds. Next, कोई भी गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटी है, कोई भी सिक्योरिटी है गवर्नमेंट का या सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट का या स्टेट गवर्नमेंट का, उन सिक्योरिटीज पे इफ यू आर गेटिंग इंटरेस्ट, the TDS would not be deducted. I'm not saying the TDS and the interest is not taxable in your hand. I'm saying they will not deduct the TDS. They will not deduct the TDS. What did I say? If there is any security of central government or state government and the interest is earned on them, the TDS would not be deducted. The TDS would not be deducted. But there is one exception to this exception, that it may be noted that the tax has to be deducted at source in respect of interest payable on 8% saving taxable bonds or 7.75% saving taxable bonds, only if such interest exceeds 10,000 during the financial year. Now, do we have to remember all these bonds which are there? No. For you, what we discussed, one is debentures wala, which you have to remember, that if the Indian company issues, if a public company issues debentures to the individual HUF, then TDS would only be deducted if the amount is more than 5,000. Interest is more than 5,000 and interest is paid through account paycheck. Then you have to remember कि LIC GIC को कोई इंटरेस्ट मिलेगा उस पे TDS नहीं कटेगा. 54 EC के बॉन्ड्स पे कोई इंटरेस्ट मिलेगा उस पे there would be no TDS. Then you have to remember that कोई भी गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटी पे there would be no TDS, but ये जो सेविंग टैक्सेबल वाली है on that there would be TDS. That's it. Only if the limit is 10,000. Otherwise there is no limit. Even if you're paying 100 rupees ka interest to a firm on debentures, TDS would be deducted. There is no threshold limit except for this debentures and except for this security. Clear हुआ? Yes or no? So TDS, as I told you in 192A for general, TDS has to be deducted on the entire amount. Except one section, TDS has to be deducted on the entire amount. Threshold and flat rates say flat rates with no surcharge and cess would be added except for case of, I'll tell you, a non-resident. अगर non-resident को payment हो रहा है, then surcharge and cess would be added. Otherwise, no surcharge and cess would be added. TDS में surcharge and cess हम किस में add करते हैं? When we are making payment for salary. Salary में surcharge and cess होगा, okay? 192 में. But जहाँ there are flat rates, there would be no surcharge and cess. 193 is not again very important section, but yeah, what you all have to remember that I have cleared it out, okay? एक बार रीड कर लेना, इतना सारा क्वेश्चन इसमें से नहीं आता. डिबेंचर वाला क्वेश्चन कैन डेफिनेटली कम. डिबेंचर्स और इंडिविजुअल HUF. Next section is dividend. Dividend is taxable in the hands of the recipient. Yes, yes. ये हमने other sources में पढ़ा था. Correct. Section 194 is for dividend. So if the payment is in the nature of dividend, as if the income is in the nature of dividend, TDS would be deducted under section 194. Who will deduct the TDS? Deductor. But who is the deductor? Domestic company. Please write here domestic company. We're not talking about your foreign companies, only domestic company. Who would be the deductee? Resident person. Only resident person. Domestic company, resident person. What is the rate of TDS? 10%. What is the time of deduction? At the time of payment. Here it is at the time of payment. So when the TDS is declared, then you will not deduct the TDS. Sorry, when the dividend is declared, then you will not deduct the TDS. The moment you will deposit it to the shareholders, then you will deduct the TDS. And that only to a resident person. Next, you will say, ma'am, threshold रहेगा बस. Threshold limit is more than 5,000. Students, 192A में the limit was 50K or more. So even it was 50,000, you had to deduct the TDS. But 193 में या 194 में, if it crosses 5,000, then you have to deduct TDS and on the entire amount. So if the dividend is 7,000, then the TDS would be 700 and not on 2,000. I'm repeating it again and again. But triggering point is when it triggered. When it crosses 5,000. Now it is exact 5,000, no TDS on the dividend. No TDS on the dividend. Clear? And obviously the dividend has to be paid in any mode other than cash. Similarly, here also if the dividend is paid to LIC or GIC, no TDS would be deducted. That you can write in other points. साथ टेबल बना लो, कोई टेंशन नहीं है, but I want you to self prepare this table. I want you to self write the things, okay? Prepare the habit of self study, no spoon feedings. अभी नहीं समझ आएगा, but बाद में you will see this would impact a lot. That's why I keep on writing in front of you. Dividend का clear, very simple. Ma'am, इसमें सारे deemed dividends covered है. Yes, all types of dividends, whether given through cash or whether through given as loan, all of those would be considered. चले आगे पक्का से. Now the most favorite section of mine is coming, 194A. Now from here, now you will be able to relate more because these are very common in daily life. Section 192, salary payment. Section 192, premature PF withdrawal. Section 193, interest on security. Section 194, dividend. Now we move ahead to section 194A. Section 194A. Nature of payment is interest other than interest on securities. क्योंकि सिक्योरिटीज का किस पे कवर हो गया 193 में. So here we are talking about any interest. Think about any interest which you think you have taken a loan from your friend, you are paying interest on that, that is also covered. You have taken a loan from bank, you are paying interest on that, that is also covered. Bank is giving you interest on FD, any interest which you can think of, interest on income tax refunds, all of these interests first are covered here. Obviously exceptions are there, we'll see, but all the interest which you see in your daily walks of lives and businesses, all of those interests are covered here. Okay, 194A में interest other than interest on securities. First, we see who will deduct the TDS. This is very important. Now, from this time onwards, these are the very important sections, very common sections also. So, who is the deductor? I'll say any person except individual and HUF. And do you mean individual and HUF को TDS काटना ही नहीं है? No. Any person except individual and HUF. But individual and HUF only when their preceding financial year में अगर if they are doing business, the turnover is more than 1 crore. Or if they're into a profession, then the gross receipts are more than 50 lakhs. In the preceding financial year. Preceding financial year क्या हुआ? So if I have to deduct the TDS for the previous year, 21-22, I'm making an interest payment. Think yourself as a deductor. I'm making an interest payment. I'm an individual. I will only deduct TDS when in previous year. Preceding financial year कौन सा हो जाएगा? Previous year or the financial year 2021 में, if the turnover is more than 1 crore, if I'm doing a business or if I'm into a profession, the gross receipts are more than 50 lakhs. the gross receipts are more than 50 lakhs or the turnover is more than 1 crore. Then only the TDS is required to be deducted. Again, I'll repeat. The TDS is required to be deducted by any person. So any person except individual HUF. Company, firms, AOP, POI, they have to deduct the TDS. But individual and HUF will only deduct the TDS on interest if in the preceding financial year. In the preceding financial year, the turnover is more than 1 crore or the gross receipts is more than 50 lakhs. And why so? I'll tell you why. See, interest, TDS काटना, TDS deduct करना, there are lots of compliances. First, you have to obtain a TAN number. You have to deduct the TDS. You have to deposit the TDS. You have to file TDS return. You have to issue TDS certificate. And then in doing all those things, you will hire a CA. You will hire someone or a tax consultant who will help you doing all this. You will pay amount to this. So there are lots of compliances. As an assessee, you have a compliance to file your return of income and all those things. That is one thing. But additional compliances come the moment you become a deductor. You agree on this? The moment you become deductor, additional compliances come. TDS काटना है, deposit करना है, TAN number obviously पहले लेना है, returns file करनी है, every quarter the returns are filed, TDS deposited every month, issue certificates. So all of these are altogether a separate jhanjat, right? So the government says that why we bothered with so many compliances to small taxpayers or the person who are doing business at a small scale. Because small scale pay, they have to deal with so many compliances, it would be an unnecessary burden to their pocket. Okay? So these common payments which are very common, individual and HUF will deduct TDS only if they have a sufficient turnover in the preceding financial year. Only then they will deduct the TDS. अभी तक employer employment there was no such limit. 192A में obviously the fund में there was no such limit. Individual HUF का interest on securities में individual HUF will never issue securities. Dividend में obviously individual HUF will never pay the dividend. The companies pay the dividend, right? But now going forward, we'll see the common payments where the individual HUF are involved on daily basis. But they will not deduct the TDS. I'm here talking about the deductor perspective. Socho deductor kaun hai? You are the deductor, okay? They will not deduct the TDS if the turnover in the preceding financial year is more than if the turnover is not more than 1 crore in case of business or in case of profession, not more than 50 lakhs. This reference will come in future sections also. So I will say then that jo 194A mein deducted tha. I will not explain it again and again. So the reference will come in future sections. So you have to have a clarity here. You will not say, ma'am, preceding year mein audit nahi hua, aisa likh de. No, you have to write it like this. Deductor wala part clear? पक्का से कोई डाउट किसी को डिडक्टर वाले पार्ट पे? रीजन क्लियर कि क्यों होता है दिस? चलो ग्रेट. Now back to who would be the deductee. Who would be the deductee? Resident person. So if any person or individual HUF of this category is making a payment of interest to a resident person, then the TDS has to be deducted under section 194A at the rate of 10%. The rate is 10%. Ma'am, what is the threshold limit? The threshold limit in general is 5,000. More than 5,000, the moment it crosses more than 5,000, the interest has to be, the TDS has to be deducted on such interest. I mark this asterisk or a star, which you can see. We'll discuss this limit. In general, the limit is 5,000. अभी तक किसी को doubt? Time of deduction. Time of deduction is credit or due, whichever is earlier. A credit or payment, whichever is earlier, or due or paid, whichever is earlier, I should write. Due or payment, whichever is earlier. Okay. Now we will understand certain exceptions. ये exceptions करेंगे, बहुत मजा आएगा. Let's see. Next 5-7 minutes, these would be very interesting. So please, people on the screen, everyone. Limit is 5,000. But when the bank is making the payment of interest, the bank or the post office is making the payment of interest on term deposit. सबसे पहले, what is term deposit? Term deposit क्या होता है? Like FD, recurring deposits, those who are there for certain terms. Saving deposit is not a term deposit, it's an on-demand deposit. ठीक है? Interest आपको saving पे भी मिलता है, but here only interest. I'm talking about interest on term deposit. The limit would be 40,000. So if the interest is more than 40,000 on your term deposit, then only the bank will deduct the TDS. Then only the bank would deduct the TDS. However, to provide a relief to senior citizen, this 40,000 ka limit becomes 50,000. 40,000 ka limit becomes 50,000 if the payee is senior citizen. If the payee is senior citizen, then the TDS would be deducted only when the interest on term deposit paid during the financial year is more than 50,000. Is more than 50,000. For whom? Only for bank and post office. They will not deduct TDS. No TDS. Exceptions bata rahe. No TDS under section. No TDS by. Sorry. No TDS under section 194 on saving interest. Saving deposit का interest होता है, उस पे there would be no TDS. So now if you will see TDS किसी को interest मिल रहा है on saving deposit. सबसे पहले interest of 40,000 on saving deposit. That means you are putting lump sum in your saving account because 4% के rate पे 40,000 मिलना is a dream anyway. Back to it. Saving a bank account पे आपको कोई भी interest मिलता है, they will never ever deduct the TDS. Fixed deposits पे आपको कोई interest मिलता है, bank will deduct the TDS only if the interest is more than 40,000. Interest is up to 40,000, no TDS. More than 40,000, yes, TDS. If you are paid, if the pay is senior citizen, the limit would be 50,000. General 194 का limit is 5,000. Remember? But the moment the interest crosses 40,000, only then the bank or the post office would deduct TDS on term deposit. They will not deduct the TDS on saving bank deposit, even if it is more than 5,000. No TDS on saving bank deposit. Saving bank deposit ka interest. Similarly, another exception is no TDS on interest of income tax refund. Income tax refund क्या होता है? जब आप extra tax deposit कर देते हो, whether through TDS or advance tax, and then your liability is less, you get income tax refund. Income tax refund पे government gives you interest. On that interest, they will not deduct the TDS. On that interest, they will not deduct the TDS. All of these things will help you a lot when you are doing an articleship. Trust me, these things, if you remember, I do not know how much importance you will give it for the exam, but trust me, throughout your articleship, throughout your practice, these things will help you a lot. Interest on partnership form में मिलता है, right? Interest on partners capital होता है, correct? Remember? Yes, उस पे भी no TDS. So the firm will not deduct TDS on the interest paid to the partners capital. Clear? Then no TDS on interest paid to bank. Interest paid to bank, financial corporations, LIC, UTI, इन सबको आप इंटरेस्ट पे करते हो, you will not deduct the TDS. Or cooperative banks, that's why if you have seen, you take a loan from bank, ठीक है? You take a loan from bank, you pay interest on it. Suppose you have taken a housing loan या car loan, you will be paying interest on it. Ever you thought that इस पे TDS कटेगा? No, because it's an exception. Why? Because bank, oh, you are paying the interest on that. It's an exception that no TDS would be deducted. No TDS would be deducted. Similarly, LIC से आपने housing loan लिया या LIC से loan लिया against insurance policies, on that interest also no TDS would be deducted. NBFCs कैसे? जैसे India Bulls हो गया, all of these are NBFCs. NBFCs को आप जब interest दे रहे हो, when you are paying interest on housing loan say taken from India Bulls or housing loan taken from HDB Financial Services or Bajaj Finance, these are all NBFC, non-banking finance company. उन पे you have to pay the TDS. उस पे you have to pay the TDS, but not here. But only if you will pay the TDS as an individual when your turnover is crossing 1 crore. Okay. Then I think there is one cooperative bank wala, but at this level you can just give it a read. Other exceptions we have mostly covered. Accident and claims we can read. There are some more exceptions here, but the important one are the one which I have covered. Okay, which you will use in daily basis. Now let's take an example. Quickly, 2 minutes का example is. So sorry, students. The light got tripped and everything got shut off. I'm so sorry. Back to where we were discussing. The session has not got over yet. Okay, we are back. Okay. So quickly, we were discussing one example, and then we'll wrap the class. There was some light issue out of my control. Back to it. Okay. Those who have said thank you, please come back. We are yet to close this with a very important example. So I was telling you that the TDS is required to be deducted by bank on term deposit. ठीक है? एक चीज याद रखना, these limits are per deductor, per deductee. बैंक कितनों को TDS देता है does not matter. Bank may be having multiple FDs with multiple people, but here what is important is per deductee the limit has to be there. ठीक है? And bank after CBS आया था central banking system. उसके बाद every branch of bank is considered total in one unit. So suppose if you have an FD with Mumbai branch, we're talking about HDFC Bank. ठीक है? You have an FD with Mumbai branch. You have an FD with Tamil Nadu branch. And you have an FD with Kolkata branch. So everywhere वहाँ पे एक city में एक सही में आपके पास FD है of HDFC Bank only. ठीक है? You are Mr. X. मुंबई में FD है, तमिलनाडु में FD है, कोलकाता में FD है, and हर एक FD पे the interest which is coming is 15,000. Will the TDS would be deducted? You are there with HDFC Bank for separate branch. Will the TDS would be deducted? Yes. The answer is yes. The moment it crosses 40,000, it is crossing 40,000, they will deduct the TDS, even if per branch the FD is less. But for this HDFC Bank, the deductor is one single. Who is the HDFC Bank? The pair is not Mumbai, Tamil Nadu, Kolkata branch. The pair is the HDFC branch. The pair is the HDFC branch. That's why they will deduct the TDS. That's why they will deduct the TDS. And who is the pay? Mr. X is the pay. So they will deduct the TDS. Now, on a contrary, you are Mr. X again. Okay? Mr. X again has 3 FDs, but not with same bank. He has FD with HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank, and Kotak Mahindra Bank. ठीक है? हर एक बैंक के अलग अलग बैंक के साथ they have FD. ठीक है? HDFC बैंक के साथ 20,000 का इंटरेस्ट मिल रहा है, ICICI के साथ 20,000 का इंटरेस्ट है, कोटक के साथ 15,000 का इंटरेस्ट है. Now, whether TDS would be deducted in this example? The answer is no. Even if the total interest which as Mr. X you are receiving is more than 40,000, but आपको relation देखना है per pair per pay, per pair per pay in a financial year, per pair per pay. So for HDFC Bank, Mr. X, who they are not paying interest of more than 20,000, they will not deduct the TDS. ICICI Bank is not paying interest more than 20,000, they will not deduct the TDS. The limit is per source. Okay, each source has to see its limit. Here in this example, the source was common, which was HDFC Bank. There were different branches. So that's why this was that. But here the source is not common. The source are different. HDFC Bank is a separate entity. ICICI Bank is a separate entity. Kotak is a separate entity. Okay? So this you have to remember. And last thing, whenever the TDS is deducted on minor, whenever a TDS is deducted for minor का FD है, तो minor का PAN has to be taken by the bank. Minor का FD है, तो minor का PAN has to be taken. This is the common question which comes in your exam, both these examples. So you have to see per pair, per pay का limit. ठीक है? So most important part के time पे the light went off. No worries, but we have done. So your homework would be there to read it up till page 19, 9.21. There would be certain things which you will see that these are quite technical or you might not relate to it. जो मैंने छोड़ा है वो deliberately छोड़ा है. You can skip it for the time being. First, understand the chapter. Understand the chapter. Make your foundation. Make your basics strong. ठीक है? Senior citizen Ankur, yes, is a person who is more than 60 years of age. Super senior citizen is a person who is more than 80 years of age. किसी को कोई doubt? Accumulated provident fund का accumulated balance का taxation must have been discussed at the salary chapter. Akka say everything is clear. I hope you understood. See, this was the first time. Maybe many of you might have heard the word of TDS. I hope you understood the concept, what TDS actually is, why it is there in the system, who is deductor, who is deductee, who is the payer, who is the payee, when the TDS has to be deducted, what rate the TDS has to be deducted, what is all the mechanism which is there for TDS. I hope everything is clear. Okay, now today with today's class, since we made the base for TDS, the coming class we will cover all the sections which are remaining for TDS, which is there in your modules. So please be prepared, learn the concept. Be on time. We'll start next class with the section 194 BB. Okay, thank you so much. Have a very good day. Have a great week. Thanks a lot. Yes.